Can the MCU's Tom Holland prove that he is a box office star beyond Spider Man? Well, two recently critically trashed films certainly put that into question. Let's talk about Chaos Walking and Cherry. Hey everybody, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It, and welcome to my spoiler-free reviews for the new films Chaos Walking and Cherry, both starring Tom Holland, who plays, of course, Spider-Man in the MCU. Chaos Walking is in theaters right now, and Cherry you can get for free on Apple TV Plus if you have that streaming service. These movies have been just gutted by critics, and we're going to talk about maybe why that is. But if you are new to Dan Reviews It, thank you for finding this video. Please consider subscribing, hitting that little bell below there to get all of the updates when I release new videos, which seems to be almost every day these days. A lot of movie reviews, but TV reviews as well, and some other things sprinkled in there too. But let's talk about these two movies. First, let's start with Chaos Walking. That is in theaters right now, like I mentioned, and Tom Holland plays Todd Hewitt, who tells you his name at least 100 times in this movie. This takes place about 250 years in the future, and this character, Todd, discovers a mysterious woman, played by Daisy Ridley, who has crashed on his planet. This is a dystopian world where all the females have disappeared and all the men are gifted, or afflicted, I should say, not quite gifted, with this force called noise that puts their thoughts on display. It's coming out of their head in these like colorful waves. And so he is trying to protect this new woman while they are being chased by some people who, quite obviously want to figure out what this woman is all about, why she's here, who is she, why she doesn't have noise like all the guys. And her name is Viola, and like I said, that's Daisy Ridley. Also featured in this movie is Nick Jonas, Mads Mikkelsen, Damian Bashir, and Cynthia Erivo. This is based on a book called Chaos Walking. There's actually a trilogy of these books, but judging by the reception and box office take of this first film, I'm going to say there's probably not going to be a trilogy of these. I think it's just going to be one movie. But the first book is called The Knife of Never Letting Go, and I'm not sure if this movie encapsulates the whole trilogy or just, goes for this book. So maybe it was never meant to be a trilogy. I don't know. But in any event, does it work? Well, look, for one thing, well, no, it doesn't. But for one thing, I'm not one to typically seek out information about the background of the filming and all the different production issues and this and that and the other thing and all the different reshoots and, how long it took to get from the page to the screen. That is less interesting to me than the finished product, right? Once the movie's out, and I've seen it, I've talked about it, I've reviewed it, if I get the DVD or something, yes, I love listening to, the commentary on that and looking at behind the scenes stuff in that respect. But I sort of like to grade a film based on what we see on the screen, and not much else. However, this movie is so all over the place, and there's so many things that just in general don't make sense or are completely tonally off from other parts of the movie, that it was hard to not sort of look into what's going on. And sure enough, this is a movie that has gone under several rewrites in the last 10 years. Many different people were attached to it. And finally, in 2017, they really had started getting the cast together for it. But even at that point, they did a bunch of reshoots in 2018, 2019 as well, following poor test screening. So all of these other things, contributed. And because Daisy Ridley obviously was doing Star Wars stuff, Tom Holland was doing Spider-Man stuff, they had to put off the reshoots for a while as well. So this movie comes to us with a very, very troubled past, and it's easy to see that in the finished product. It's all over the place. Now, first of all, I sort of really like the concept of the noise. I mean, we've seen this in various other sci-fi projects or even some comedy projects with things like What Women Want and What Men Want. But the whole idea of like your thoughts being on display is an interesting one, and I think it's worth exploring. But in this universe, it basically takes the idea of the noise and your thoughts on display and basically just designates it to like whatever they need it to do for the story. The thematically it contradicts itself dozens of times all throughout this movie. What noise exactly people can hear and what you can keep covered up. And he has this kind of thing where he continually, says his name. My name is Todd Hewitt. My name is Todd Hewitt, to try and reduce his noise. And okay, that's fine. But there's plenty of times when his character is just completely silent, and that doesn't really make sense, especially when the girl is involved, because since there's no females in this world per se, obviously that's not true because she's here, but he's never seen one, and it's hard to tell how old his character really is, especially since they started shooting this back in 2017 and 2018. He could be 16, he could be 25, we have no really idea. But in any event, it's all of the hormonal stuff that comes with, oh my gosh, there's a girl and I have hormones and a penis and I'm just going to spout my thoughts about it. And like some of it is played off for laughs. And I don't think any of it genuinely comes off as like creepy, because this is how a guy would think that's never seen a girl before, and she's very pretty. Obviously, she's Daisy Ridley. We get it. So I don't think it necessarily comes off as creepy, but like it comes off as just very annoying because he's trying to like keep these things inside, and he keeps having to apologize for having different thoughts, but she still goes along with him on the journey because she's like, well, why not, you're trying to protect me, I guess. But he's also trying to clearly like sleep with her or have some kind of romantic relationship with her, and he makes that abundantly clear, but she's still like, okay, let's go with it. Like the gender tropes in this are just really bad in general, and some of them are played for laughs, which I don't know quite how I feel about that. And then there's, a whole host of other problems with the movie, with the pacing and the different plot issues, and so much of this movie could have gone right. But it reminded me as I was watching it of After Earth, the M. Night Shyamalan movie with Will Smith and Jaden Smith that actually had a pretty interesting concept, but then turned out to be completely horrible at just about every turn. The technology, a lot of it doesn't really make sense either within the confines of the film. I thought that was a little bit confusing and not very well done. The acting here is okay, but Tom Holland basically is sort of the Peter Parker version, of himself, because he's this awkward, maybe teenage, maybe young adult kid who is finding out his hormones. And so, he's just acting basically the exact same way he does as Peter Parker. I think this as a film might have worked better 15 years ago. Jupiter Ascending is another movie that sort of comes to mind when I watch this. Like, visually, it's maybe a little bit interesting, and, some of the stuff about the concept is mildly interesting, but then in execution, it's just horrible. So if this was supposed to be the start of a trilogy, I think they really missed the mark. And if they did combine all three books into one movie, well, then God bless, you've got one crappy movie. We don't have to even think about it anymore. But yeah, this for me was a letdown. I leave Chaos Walking with a D+. Let's talk about Cherry now. And I want to preface this one because I think this is actually the best performance Tom Holland has given us outside of the MCU. I have never given a non-MCU role or movie, I should say, of Tom Holland's that is live action anything greater than a C+, I think. But The Current War was like a C, and that's another one that took several years to get to the screen. And he's done, some voice work that I've been fine with. Onward, he was good in. Doolittle was a terrible movie, and I think I gave that a D, but that was hardly his fault. And I think there was one other recent movie he had a voice role in. I can't think of it, but there's also been a couple other live actions, but none of them I've really graded very high. And Cherry does not break that trend. It's better than Chaos Walking, and we'll talk about why, but this is still another one that is just very disappointing. So, is Tom Holland going to be pigeonholed into this Spider-Man MCU Peter Parker character because he does that very, very well? And I think the answer is maybe, unless he really starts turning in some performances and some movies that are above this kind of very mediocre to worse kind of thing. I don't know. I mean, he is good performance-wise in this movie Cherry, but there's so many things about this one that don't hit either. So let's first talk about the direction. So this is Anthony and Joe Russo, who have directed him in Endgame and some of the other MCU kind of stuff, and this is their first movie after Endgame. They were like, listen, the world's our oyster. We're going to do whatever movie we want. We're going to do this book. This is another one based on a book from, let's see, the novel is by Nico Walker. And basically, it's sort of an autobiographical novel. The character in the movie, though, is not actually named Nico. So it's like a little bit skewed off, but his name is Cherry. And I would say clearly that's a nickname, but they never ever say anything other than Cherry. So, all right, fine. We have Sierra Bravo here as Emily. We have, not a ton of people that we know in leading roles, but Jack Rayner is here as one of his drug dealers. And in small roles, we've got like Damon Wayans Jr., Thomas Lennon. They have like one scene. But this is what they decided to direct the Russo brothers after Endgame. And they basically decided to turn it into some sort of Endgame for the drama set, because basically it's way overlong. It's almost 2.5 hours. And with that comes these different chapters of Cherry's life, which, obviously is, since it's based on this book, it's really Nico Walker's life. And it's essentially, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, and we go through all these different things. We have him as a younger gentleman, meeting this girl, Emily, who, like I said, is played by Sierra Bravo, and then they, fall for each other, but then chapter 2, he goes off to be in the army, and we see a lot of things that happen there, and then, chapters 3 and 4, as we move on, he has a virulent drug habit, strung out on heroin and many other things, and he turns into a bank robber because of that lifestyle. Can't really support him and his girl Emily without robbing some banks. He decides that's the best way to go about, getting the money he needs for all these drugs and to pay off all these people that along the way he's wronged and has owed money to. He has severe PTSD. And that is something that, is a great topic to cover in a movie like this. And like many other things, it's done horribly. Addiction, a great topic to cover in a movie like this. And they do some of the addiction stuff and his descent into addiction. They do it pretty well. But because of the episodic nature and having actual chapters, they've just turned this movie into, let's throw everything at the wall like we did in Endgame. Let's have all of these different facets of Cherry come together like we had in Endgame. But in Endgame, we had a couple dozen movies building up. Here, we don't know any of these people, So we're supposed to feel very, very bad for Cherry because of, his PTSD and how he was treated by the army and various things and issues that I think could certainly prove to be interesting discussion points, interesting, dramatic things in movies. But we don't care about any of these characters because none of them care about their own lives. Getting high is the only thing they care about. They don't care who they hurt when they rob the banks. There's not a lot of remorse there. And Holland is very good in this role. I'll say that again. But this movie is so overly long, and because of the chapters, it's like 3 to 4 different movies all smushed together because each chapter of his life has a completely different tone to it. And I get what they were trying to do. Yes, going into the army and seeing all these things in battle will change you. Yes, drugs will then change you again. And I understand that that's what they were going for, but as a through line for a movie, it just does not work. So I think here the acting is probably going to be one of the top elements here. And it does prove to me that maybe Tom Holland, with a better script, better direction, a shorter movie, maybe could do something outside the MCU and have it be successful. But he has yet to prove that that is the case, because this one is another very average film in his list. So I leave Cherry. I teeter on this one between a C and a C minus, because of a good Tom Holland performance and because the last half of the movie about the drug addiction and the desperation and all that stuff is more interesting. And less, I think, run of the mill than some of the earlier stuff in the first, say, hour of the film. I will leave Cherry with a C. It is certainly better than Chaos Walking, but at the 2 hour and 21-minute runtime, it certainly overstays its welcome, probably more than Chaos Walking does. So each have their benefits and detractions, but I'll leave Cherry with a slightly higher grade for sure than Chaos Walking, because at least the attempt was there to do something a little bit different. I just don't think it succeeded. So that's it. Thank you for watching. We'll be back probably tomorrow or the next day with more movie reviews. I'm really trying to knock out a lot of these 2020 movies that have been left over that are up for Oscars. I have a bunch of the foreign movies to get to and some other things, so we'll get to all of that. The Father I saw, I want to get up a review for that as well. That's up for Best Picture this year, so look for that coming soon as well. But kind of trying to knock them out as I see them, and I just happen to see these two within the last week. So there you go. All right, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.